All right. On this perpendicular plate, if you look on either side, you're going to see two little bumps here. And these little bumps are known as the nasal conchae. And you've got an inferior nasal conchae down at the bottom, and then you have a medial nasal conchae. You also have a superior nasal conchae, which is up higher in here, and you can't actually see it. If you come over here on this model, you can actually see the three nasal conchae right here. So they're just, that's the inferior, the medial, and then the superior nasal conchae. These are just ridges that create turbulence so that when you're trying to warm, moisten, and filter the air coming into your nose or your nasal cavity, that provides more surface area for you to do the warming, the moistening, and the filtering of that. So just remember, when you're looking in the bony structures, though, of these skulls, you only see the inferior nasal concha and the medial nasal concha. You cannot see the superior one. It's hidden up here. So that's always a good lab test question. Be prepared for it. All right. You also have an ethmoid sinus, which would be a cavity within the ethmoid bone. And again, if you pinch right in there between your eyes, you're going to be squeezing against that ethmoid sinus. So that's just a cavity inside that kind of boxy bone right down in here. All right, then you have, on the sides, you have two temporal bones that are outlined right around like this, and it goes back down like that and comes around here. I'll go ahead and put the lid on. Whoa, yes, she's coordinated. Put the lid on here. I can't do this. Why is this such a problem? All right. I don't have my glasses on, that's why. All right, so your temporal bone, again, it's outlined by this squamosal suture, and it comes around there. The features that you need to know on each of your temporal bones: first, you have your zygomatic process. That's just this little arm hanging out right here, and it's named zygomatic process because it articulates with the zygomatic bone, which makes your cheek. Okay, so there's your zygomatic process of the temporal bone. Then you have the mandibular fossa, which is just going to be, kind of put this guy back together. A fossa is just a dip or a pit. So there's your mandible. So it's that pit right there where the mandible articulates with the temporal bone. That forms your temporomandibular joint. You've heard of people that have TMJ problems. Well, that's the joint right there that they're having problems with. That's the mandible, and that's the mandibular fossa right there. So that little pit right there is your mandibular fossa. Then you have the styloid process. You see this little pointy pin hanging out there? Stylus is a pin. So that is your styloid process. That's an attachment point for muscles. Then you have your mastoid process, this big chunk. If you stick your finger up behind your ear, you'll be able to feel a big, hard, chunky place right there. So that's your mastoid process. And a lot of times you'll get mastoid sinus headaches. So you've got a cavity within that mastoid process, and that can fill up and cause pressure and cause you to have a mastoid headache. All right, so there's your mastoid process, then your styloid process. You've got your mandibular fossa. You have your zygomatic process. And then you've got this hole right here, which is called the external auditory meatus. That's just the same hole that you stick your finger in your ear. That's what you're sticking it in right there. So that's how sound comes into your ear. Well, if you've got an external auditory meatus, then you've probably got an internal one. So let's look on the inside and see where that is. You notice if I stick this pipe cleaner in here, it doesn't go all the way through, but just kind of look where it's coming through. It's coming out under this ridge, this big ridge on kind of between the second and third shelves here. And on the back side of the ridge, so this is anterior, this is the face, this is the back of the head. On the back side of this ridge here, you're going to see a little hole, and that is the internal auditory meatus or internal acoustic meatus. So you've got one on this side of the ridge too. So there's your internal auditory meatus, also known as internal acoustic meatus. I keep spitting on myself, sorry about that. And then you've got your external auditory meatus, which is just that canal. So sound travels in here, then it comes through this auditory nerve and then into your brain right there, through that internal auditory meatus. The other things that you're going to need to know about this bone is you have a couple foramina that you need to name. I'm going to start on the outside here. So we're going to flip this guy upside down. So we're looking at, if you just cut this guy's head off and looked at what you saw, this is what, that's the...
Hey, Meg, show the sphenoid bone on the bottom.
Okay, there's the sphenoid bone right there. You can see that outlined on the bottom as well.
Okay.
Okay? Can you see it like that?
Yeah.
Okay. So you see it coming up like that, and there's the greater wings up here, and then there's the bottom half. So notice that makes the floor of that cranial vault right there, and you can see it. All right. Then if you look underneath on the temporal bone, wait, am I on temporal? What am I on? Yeah, I'm on temporal. You've got two foramina that you need to know. You've got the jugular foramina, which if you find the foramen magnum, that big one, and then the first one going anterior, it almost looks like a double hole right there. Those are going to be,
Tilt it up a little bit, there you go.
those are going to be your jugular foramina. So you've got the foramen magnum, and then the most anterior holes going up. Those, it kind of looks like a double hole right there. It kind of looks like it's got two spots. That's the
lean back a little bit.
Jugular foramina right there. So that's the jugular foramen. Foramen is one, foramina is two. And then just anterior to that, you've got another hole, which is your carotid foramen. So you've got the jugular vein runs through that, and then the carotid artery runs through that one. So that's looking at it from the underneath side. Now if you flip it over and you're looking at the floor of the cranial vault, you see your jugular foramina on each side coming up like that, and it looks even more like a double hole. But now your carotid foramina doesn't appear. Well, it actually turns up in this ridge and goes forward. So don't confuse this hole right here, which is the internal auditory meatus or internal acoustic meatus, with the carotid foramina. That's the internal acoustic meatus. That's the jugular foramen. Okay, what else do we need? Let's